Welcome to our seminar transmitted in Spanish and English. Please select the language in the option below if you want to switch languages. Today's seminar is how to calculate the return on investment, ROI, of an Airbnb property. The goal of this presentation is to teach how to calculate the return on an investment for a daily rental or Airbnb properties using an Excel calculator. We will also explain the advantage of having multiple income streams versus just one in 2 and 3 bedroom properties. Additionally, we will explain the advantages of these investments using a real estate loan. At the end of this presentation, you will know how to calculate the return on an investment and how to evaluate a daily rental property using our calculator. At the end of this presentation, you will be able to receive the calculator for free. But first, I need to read the following disclaimer. Today's presentation is an instructional session on learning how to calculate the return on investment, ROI, of a daily rental property. The instructional session will be conducted using an Excel calculator created by David Chavarria with DCH Real Estate and Property Management, where we'll use uncertain numbers to convey the idea that multiple income streams are always better than one. The numbers we'll review today are not intended for you or any buyer participating in this presentation to make a business decision without conducting prior research with a professional. No one can project and/or guarantee the profitability of an investment. We can always analyze and explore what is happening today and what happened yesterday, but no one can know what will happen tomorrow. Let me introduce myself. I am David Chavarria, broker of DCH Real Estate and sales director of Vida Edgewater Miami, managing over 150 properties, including multifamily homes, condos, and Airbnbs in Miami. I hold real estate and loan licenses in the states of Texas and Florida, and I have been practicing real estate since 1998. Instructions for the webinar: please write down your questions. We will have a Q&A session at the end of each presentation. You can raise your hand, and our administrator will take your questions where we will answer them within the same order. At the end of this webinar, those who wish to have a private Zoom meeting will be directed to those rooms. So what is ROI? ROI is the metric that investors use to evaluate an investment, which is calculated by dividing the net income by the total investment. What are the best real estate investments that project the highest ROIs? There are many types of investments we can evaluate, but short-term rental properties like Airbnb are currently the most popular and project high returns. But why are daily rental properties popular today? Imagine a 1-bedroom property rented long-term for $2,500 per month. Now we divide this by 30 days in a month, we get a daily rental rate of $83 per day. On the other hand, daily rental properties could have rates of $150 per day, $250 per day, and often up to $600 per day, being higher by 40%, 300%, 800%, and many times more. Now you are wondering, so what is more popular? Studios, 1-bedrooms, 2 or 3-bedroom properties? We conducted a study using websites that measure travelers, classifying them into groups as travelers who travel alone, couples, families, or groups of 3 to 4 people, and large families or groups of 5 to 12 people. And that gave us the following results. Solo travelers, 20% of the demand. Couples, 2 people, 25% of the demand. Small families and groups of friends, 3 to 4 people, 35% of the demand. Large families and groups, 5 to 12 people, 20% of the demand. Now we know that groups of 1 to 4 people represent a total of 80% of the demand, while larger groups represent the remaining 20% with less demand. This is why Vida Edgewater designed its properties so that the studios can accommodate 1 to 4 people, the 2-bedroom units accommodate 4 to 8 people, and the 3-bedroom units accommodate 6 to 12 people, so that the studios can benefit from that 80% of the demand, while the 2 and 3-bedroom units only benefit from the other 20%. But there is a problem with small properties. What is the problem with studios and small properties? Small properties are more expensive per square foot than larger properties. That is how FlexShare, which means flexibility of use, comes to life, where now a 2-bedroom property can be used as either a 2-bedroom unit or split into 2 smaller units, one 1-bedroom and one a studio. This way, you can purchase the same property at a lower price per square foot compared to a smaller property like a one-bedroom or studio. Now, you can not only enjoy that 20% demand for a two-bedroom property, but also the 80% demand in both sections of the property, resulting in a perfect formula where we now buy an apartment at a much lower price than a studio or one-bedroom apartment, enjoying not only the 20% demand for a large apartment, but also doubling the income from the 80% demand. The same happens with the three-bedroom apartment, which we now take to another level, being able to divide it into three smaller apartments. Now we enjoy a much cheaper apartment than the studio or the two-bedroom, taking advantage of the 20% demand with the advantage of not just two, but three incomes with the 80% demand, being able to triple the income. Questions? Please raise your hand if you have any questions. We only have 5 minutes for questions related to FlexShare. Now, there are two very important factors that directly influence the ROI. Those are the average rent per day and the annual occupancy rate. So, how is Vida Edgewater going to ensure a high average rent per day? By offering a luxury experience from the moment of their stay. Vida will be able to do this by delivering a fully furnished, equipped, and finished product looking for the highest rates in the market. Offering features such as wood-paneled walls, accessories, light fixtures, custom furniture, and much more. Always aiming to secure a recurring customer. Offering 24-hour services with our 4-star hotel, being the first in the area, with 24-hour room service with amenities such as pools, jacuzzi, gym, valet parking, restaurants, cafes, and bars. All this and more with a 4-star hotel not yet available in the area. We haven't even talked about its location yet. Just 50 yards from Biscayne Bay, Vida offers views of all the wonders of Miami today, in the fastest growing area at the moment called Edgewater Miami, with quick access to Miami's main attractions, including business, music, fashion, art, vacations, and very importantly, sporting events, especially when we talk about the 2026 World Cup to be held in Miami. Let's project all this along with the feature that makes us unique in the market, the ability to divide our properties into 2 and 3 smaller apartments. So to summarize, before projecting everything discussed in our calculator, we have a boutique building with 9 floors and only 138 units, offering minimal competition when renting. Parking is included within the building, with no rental or management restrictions, meaning you can rent it daily, yearly, or live here if you wish, in addition to having hotel access. Very importantly, we have over 40 years of experience in the hotel industry with more than 40,000 hotel rooms across the United States. Lastly, it is scheduled for delivery by the end of 2025. Now let's pay attention because we are going to apply everything discussed so far in a calculator. Before we start with the calculator, I have to read a disclaimer. This is just a calculator. This Excel calculator cannot be used for making purchase decisions in any real estate project. This presentation is for educational purposes only. DCH Florida Realty LLC DBA, DCH Real Estate, and DCH Property Management do not guarantee the information presented in this table. DCH recommends hiring a professional if you do not have experience making these calculations. Let's start the calculations with the calculator. First, I'll explain how the calculator works. The calculator has 4 sections. The first section includes complete property details, such as price, type, size, association, if applicable, and something very important, the average rental price per day and the annual occupancy rate. We will discuss this further later. The second section covers gross income per month and per year, calculated using the information from Section 1. Additionally, this section accounts for the property manager's fee, which in this case is 30%. Since the hotel is managing it for that rate, you can adjust this value up or down if a different manager charges less or if you manage it yourself. This section also includes property taxes, calculated at 2%, which is what banks use for their calculations. The third section includes all corresponding expenses, also calculated per month and per year. These expenses include property tax, manager's fee, internal property insurance, air conditioning maintenance, and electricity. It assumes the association covers water, trash, and other utilities. In this case, we are not adding a rental commission. There is a legal fee for paying an accountant to prepare the annual tax return, and finally, the association fee calculated by multiplying the value per square foot by the internal size of the property. The final section calculates net income by subtracting the expenses from the gross income and then dividing it by the total investment value to obtain the return on investment, ROI. Below, we have different tabs where we can view various scenarios. We start with the initial calculations in the traditional Airbnb, and then using those same calculations, move on to lockoffs or FlexShare, applying a loan and then long-term rental. So let's start with a calculation where we have a property priced at $1,020,000 with 2 bedrooms and 774 square feet with an association fee of $1.45 per square foot. The most important thing to focus on here is the average rent per day and, as we discussed earlier, the annual occupancy rate. So the million-dollar question is, how do we obtain the average rent per day and the annual occupancy rate? For this, it is important to emphasize the difference between an Airbnb and a hotel. A hotel offers 24-hour services and amenities that are defined and worthy of a hotel establishment. Additionally, we know that an Airbnb has limited reach, relying solely on its platform to promote its properties, whereas a hotel has thousands of platforms available worldwide. This directly impacts the projection of a higher average rent per day and annual occupancy rates compared to regular traditional Airbnbs. This is how we determined, after numerous studies that we will share with you today, that the average rent per day and annual occupancy rates are higher in hotels than in traditional Airbnbs. Here we have a study conducted for studio and 1-bedroom apartments in the Edgewater area and its surroundings. We can see in the graph on the left how the daily rental rates have been rising from 2000 to the present, both for Airbnb and hotels. The difference is that hotels always maintain an advantage of around 100% more than Airbnb, ending 2024 with an average daily rental rate of $180 for Airbnb and $321 for hotels. On the right, we have the graph of the average annual occupancy rate, where we see it was also on the rise until the pandemic, showing the impact in 2020. In this comparative table, we can see how 2024 is shaping up for Airbnb with an average daily rate of $180 and a 68% occupancy rate, and for the 4-star luxury hotel with $321 and a 78% occupancy rate. So we will use these same values throughout our projection. Now we have a 2-bedroom apartment in a 4-star hotel with an average daily rental rate of around $450. We will also use a 70% occupancy rate, which might be lower if we were talking about a traditional 2-bedroom property. With this projection, we see that it currently has a 4% annual net return on investment. Again, the idea here is not to speculate. You can do that with a calculator. The goal of this guide is to show the impact of FlexShare or lockoffs compared to this scenario, which could be lower or higher than 4%. Now we see how we transition from a traditional Airbnb rental of a 2-bedroom apartment to having more income by using FlexShare or lockoffs, dividing the apartment into 2 units, a 1-bedroom apartment and a studio. We previously saw that a hotel room was priced at $320 per night. Continuing with this speculation, let's assume a 1-bedroom apartment rents for $320 and a studio for an average of $250. We maintain a 3% higher occupancy rate without speculating too much, knowing that the demand for smaller apartments is higher than for 2-bedroom apartments. This way, we see how with the same previous numbers, the annual return on investment goes from 4% to 6%. It is crucial to emphasize that my intention is not to project that 6% you see here, but to show how, in this Vida project, with all its qualities, you can always stay ahead of a traditional Airbnb with at least double the income. Whatever the income may be, it could be 4% as shown here, or it could be 1%, 2%, or whatever you want to speculate. The Vida model offers a formula that doubles it. But this doesn't end here. What would happen if I applied a mortgage loan to the same scenario? So using the same numbers and the same FlexShare or lockoffs feature, I now obtain a mortgage loan with the current rate of around 7%. Foreigners can also apply for this rate with different programs, which we will discuss with interested parties privately, but now we see how we have an additional expense of a principal and interest payment of $3,393 per month, which I include in my expenses. With this, my total expenses increase, and I am left with a net annual income of $25,529, which I now divide not by the cost of the apartment, but by my cash investment, which was $510,000, to have a 5% return on my cash payment and a property worth $1 million. Questions? Please raise your hand if you have any questions. Those who have questions and want to ask them privately, please also raise your hand so Daniel can move you to a private Zoom session.